Hi, everyone. Welcome to Payments TV. My name is John Gaffney. I'm Chief Content Officer here. And today we're continuing our month-long B2B event called Outlook 2030. And today our topic is small business data and verification. Specifically, we're going to discuss the small business conversion problem. But it's not the small businesses that have the problem. It's financial institutions and fintechs that have the problem. And here's what I mean. Fintechs onboard small to medium-sized businesses and then offboard many of them 3 months later. Banks say no to most of them that walk through their virtual or physical doors for credit unless they offer a personal guarantee, which will crater their credit score. It's because getting the right and complete data set about the business performance and financial health of the small business is like finding needles in haystacks for the hundreds of millions of SMBs worldwide. This session will explain the impact of small and medium-sized business data networks on turning fragmented source of data about SMBs into revenue for the lender and critical services for the SMB. And my guest today is the CEO and founder of the world's largest enterprise-grade B2B platform, Marqaz, and his name is Hani Pham. Hani, welcome.
To be here, John. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. So let's start with the basics, Hani. So characterize the problem, if you could, for me. How big a problem is SMB data fragmentation, and why is it an important problem?
John, this is a 40 plus year problem.
Oh,
So this is not a new phenomenon that's popped up. This is a 40-year problem that's been unaddressed. The root cause of it is that small businesses, which is what we're talking about today, fall through the cracks in terms of a comprehensive view of those small businesses for the following reasons. Credit bureaus typically need small businesses to trip three wires to get onto the bureau data. The big players, the Dun & Bradstreets, the LexisNexis, Moody's, don't pay any attention to the small businesses and they fall through the cracks. They're not covered there. So what happens is that a newly incorporated business or an informal business or a business that's been around for a long time might not even make it onto anybody's radar screen. And so they turn up, as you said in your introduction, to a bank or to a fintech or an insurance company or a retailer they want to do business with. And people say, sorry, I can't verify you. Go away. Problem number one. Problem number two is the data about these businesses, as you said, is very fragmented. And so it's not only fragmented, that's bad enough. You know, with a lot of technology today, we can say we might defragment that data. But it's not only fragmented, it's inconsistent. So the information that you'll find about a business on Google versus in a credit bureau versus somewhere else online doesn't match up. Because small businesses inherently, you know, they're running a business. They're not worried about, am I using my DBA? Am I using my legal name for the entity? Am I using the proprietor's name? And stuff changes. And no one's really been up to the task of keeping up with that in a thoughtful way. Part one. Part two, this is a global problem which exacerbates the point. So, you know, in a number of countries, particularly in Europe and certainly in the United States, a small business may already have an existing relationship with a financial institution, and they'll turn up and say, great news, I've just picked up a piece of business in Southeast Asia. And the reaction might be, great, what does that mean? I need a larger line of credit to get going in that market, or I'm using a supplier from China or Indonesia or Singapore or Thailand. Great, that represents risk immediately for the organization. They say, well, what guarantees can you give me? Because they don't have access to that information themselves. And so what ends up happening, frankly, is they get turned away, go somewhere else. Or, as you said in your introduction, provide a personal guarantee for this extra line that's secured against an individual's profile. So this is one of the big drivers of this problem. And it results, frankly, in 30% of businesses, new businesses, or businesses that go to their financial institution or fintech for something, get turned away. So it's that big a problem.
So it's a fragmentation problem and then an inconsistency problem. So how does Marqaz solve for that?
So we took on the task, John, of actually solving this issue comprehensively across the world. It's not the first time we've done it. We've done this before in the supplier buyer world. We pull from 65,000 data sources across the world. We then go, that's in today's AI world, someone might say, so what? I can get that same data. What actually happens is that the deduping of that data, the scrubbing it, the creating a clean resolution around that entity so I know who it actually is really hard. We do that. We do that with some very clever AI and very clever technology. Part one. Part two, we then look at all the information available about these businesses across the spectrum, and we scrub that, clean that, and create a complete view of their public information. So we start with the cleanest list of entities. We have about 519 million of those today, active and inactive.
Oh, wow.
We then add about 200 data elements about every business. We then go through and layer on all the compliance related stuff around sanctions, negative news, politically exposed people, AML, etc. And that becomes our starting baseline. From there, we go on and add data about that business that a bank or somebody that has a relationship with them may contribute. And then information about the business itself that is not public on a permission basis. So the bank may say, I need to see your financials, or I need to see your bank accounts, or I need to see your CRM system, or I need a pull from your accounting system of your balance sheet, whatever. We add that in. And then we go back and reapply some clever AI to test the boundaries of that. What this essentially means is we're creating, and we're the only company in the world to do this, a single unique golden record for every business and for every use case in the world. So that's part of it. And the second part is we actually do that really, really fast. So we're talking milliseconds to do that.
Oh, wow. So one of the things I find so intriguing about Marques is the duality of it. There's the business, there's the service you give to the small business, but then there's the service you give to the fintechs and the banks. Can you talk about that fintech engagement problem a little bit and how that can improve here?
It's a great point, John. We've built a two-sided platform, as you said. Mm-hmm. So one side of it is targeted at the enterprise for all that they need about the business. The other side is the view of the small business itself or the business itself. And our goal has always been that the two parties get to look at the same data. And so if there's a mismatch or if there's an error or if there's a gap, the two parties can actually populate that, not in a way that says, oh, it's a black box for that institution or that business, but that it becomes a cleaned up record that's now available to everybody else about that business. Now, there may be some proprietary elements that institution has with their customer that they don't want to divulge publicly. And that's fine. We can accommodate that and we know how to do that. And there may be elements within the business that are proprietary. They only want to share with one particular institution and not another. We can accommodate that as well. So nobody has done that before. And the reason is people have either come at it from the point of view of propagating this black box mentality for an enterprise, i.e. my customer is a bank or a fintech, and so I'll just send information to them and I won't care what they do with it. Or they've tried to go directly to a small business or to a business and say, hey, put all this other data in your profile. And the business says, why should I? What's the point? Who are you? Should I trust you? We broke the gridlock on that by basically saying, the enterprise can ask the small business for information that they will provide because they want something from the bank or the fintech, and that both get to see the information. And so if there's errors in it, it's actually easy to fix the data, which, again, nobody has done before.
So it seems like there's the fintech agenda and then there's the more traditional financial institution agenda, right? But what we're doing here is also increasing the amount of data and the reliability of data for banks as well, right?
Correct. 100% reliability. And that translates, John, frankly, into better prospecting of customers. So who are the customers that I want for particular products? Better verification in real time. And like I said before, we get typically 30 to 50% more verifications than anybody else in the market gets because of all the data stewardship and all of what we do and the two-sided nature of our business. And that translates into two things you said at the outset. One is more times people will say yes to a business, often without the need for those personal guarantees. It creates a higher level of engagement and intimacy between the bank and the business. And three, it gives the business for the first time ever a view of how they're seen. And so they can identify where they have gaps in their profile or where there's errors in their profile.
So I would have to believe at this point that you have some great stories about businesses that have come to you, banks that have come to you. Tell us some of those if you could. What are some anecdotes about how this has worked so far?
Yeah. So we've had banks, large tier one banks here in the United States, send us large files of customers. And they've said, what can you verify of this? And we typically find 70, 80% of those customers. And then they tell us these are customers nobody else could verify in the market. Wow. For a tier one bank, for a credit card product, so let's zero in, a credit card product in a tier one bank, that's lost revenue in the order of a couple of $100 million a year.
Oh, wow.
Business that got turned away that they just couldn't verify and they said no to, sorry, we're not going to accept you as a customer. The knock-on effect for those businesses, they've had to go somewhere else or provide personal guarantees, which, as you said, either craters their credit score or locks up capital that they would otherwise be using to run their business. Even very large businesses, John. Our own company earlier on was putting up financial guarantees to be able to use a payment instrument, a guaranteed payment instrument. Notwithstanding, we had millions of dollars in the bank, but they didn't know how to think about us. They didn't know how to measure us. They didn't know how to monitor us. And so they said, just put up collateral. So that's collateral we can't use to run the business. Fintech players, you said this problem earlier. We see fintech players who quickly onboard customers and then because of compliance reasons within a month or so end up freezing their accounts because frankly, they brought them on too quickly and they didn't have a complete picture of those businesses. And then once they get started, the compliance machine kicks in and they say, oh, no, we might have a potential problem here. And so instead of capital adequacy ratios having to go up, they'll just freeze the customer's account, which inevitably means the customer goes away and goes somewhere else.
Interesting. So last question for you, Hani. Let's say you were keynoting this conference, this B2B conference. I want to know what are the 2 or 3 top line takeaways from your keynote?
Number one, banks have to get out of the model of just willy-nilly buying multiple data sets for compliance reasons and shoving them into a big data lake. That doesn't work. Number two, banks should be clearer with their customers about what data they're looking for and the implication of that data rather than a pass-fail narrative, which is what happens today. Number three, banks and it's fintechs as well, should be working to provide their customer with a view of their data and educating them about the importance of management and stewardship of their own data. Nobody's doing that today. No one's saying, they'll say, oh, you want to see your credit score and why it's gone up or down, but we all know credit scores to a small business is basically a black box. Hell, it's a black box for consumers, basically. Other than the glib comments that people get on a credit report. Fourth, and you asked for 3, I'm going to give you 4. The fourth is we got to, as an industry, do a better job of educating businesses about management of their data, keeping their data up to date, and giving them line of sight of their data and the implications of what their data is saying. They would be my 4 points.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. So
Pleasure.
that's going to do it. That's going to be a wrap for this episode of Payments TV. My guest has been Marqaz CEO Hani Pham. Hani, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, John. Always a pleasure.